I'm currently surrounded by over 30 of the best cases and accessories for the iPhone 16 Pro, and in this video we'll be talking about the pros and cons for pretty much all of these. One of the biggest new topics of discussion when it comes to iPhone 16 cases is how they approach the camera control button, and just about all of these do it a little bit differently. But just jumping right in, this is of course the Apple Silicon case, and I think this is the ultramarine color for this year. I found over the past few years of doing my own tech content that I tend to gravitate towards cases that weigh less, and for whatever reason this tends to be one of the lightest of any of them every year. It's also really grippy, so if you're the type of person that drops your phone a lot, this is definitely a good option. Obviously a downside to that is that it does pick up a ton of lint when you put it in and out of your pocket, so just kind of be warned that it will collect a lot of dust and lint over time. For something like this, we're talking about a medium level of protection, so if you drop your phone from kind of like waist height or so, it's going to be completely fine. And then obviously the touch sensitive button feels really well integrated in this case. You see, a feature that I think a lot of people consider as an upside with this case is obviously this camera control button, but it almost ventures into the downside category for me personally, just because of how easy it is to accidentally press when you're just using the phone. To the point where I actually turned the swipe gestures completely off when I was using this case and basically just use camera control as a way to launch my camera app. And then that leads obviously to the price. For around $50 or $70 Canadian, this tends to be really pricey for just kind of a rubber silicon case. I don't know. I think there are a lot of better third-party options available, and I'll be talking about more of those in just a moment. Now, the next first-party case is going to be the Clear case from Apple, and this is my least favorite one that they currently sell. The standard colors this year on the 16 line are really, really good. The ultramarine is just gorgeous, so I wanted to get something where I can actually see the phone through the case, and that's kind of the upside of this one. But unfortunately for me, that's just about where all of the upsides kind of stop with this one. For one, this case just feels extremely slippery in the hand, and I'm personally just not a big fan of that. The case also tends to get a ton of dust in this area underneath for whatever reason. This one also has no bottom edge protection, and I don't really understand why they did this, but literally the entire bottom of the phone is empty. The buttons are also really stiff to press. They're actually the stiffest buttons out of any case on this list for whatever reason. And obviously my same gripes with the camera control button are going to carry over from the last case, since they use effectively the same button. And if you're a fan of the Clear case look, I do have a better one later on in the list that I think is a much better alternative to this. All right, next one. This one is a bit of a weird one. It's kind of a first party case, but it's also third party. It's made by Beats. Obviously Apple owns Beats, and this is the first time I think that we've really seen them do accessories for different Apple products other than just headphones. It's a little bit of a departure from the tradition here. You can see they have this really nice kind of orange felt on the inside here, and then yeah, just like this cream kind of color. I think this looks really nice. My downsides are that this is a plastic cover. It's very expensive for a basic plastic cover. It feels like maybe one of the cheapest cases on this list, and it is definitely not the cheapest in price. This one's a cool idea. I just don't know if they executed it very well. Now, moving on to some of my favorite third-party cases, I want to feature a few options from one of my favorite brands that I've talked about on the channel a lot, and that is Nomad. They did something really nice with the finish on their popular sport case this year, where they had this almost pearlescent finish on them where it kind of shines and reflects in different lights, and I am a big fan of this change. These cases also start at $50, similar to Apple's, but for that price, you're actually getting a little bit more feature-wise. The TPU edges have this really nice groove that's cut down the length of the phone, so holding it in the hand is really comfortable. And then Nomad releases a ton of different limited edition colors. So I have 3 of them from this year's lineup, but throughout the year, they constantly do new drops, so there's just always something new right around the corner, it feels like. And then what I consider to be an upside with this is the pill style cutout for the camera control button. It feels like getting your finger down in there and actually pressing the button is a much more intentional act versus the Apple approach where you can just accidentally press it with the palm of your hand. I will note, however, that some cases tend to be a little bit on the flimsy side when they do the pill cutout, and this kind of front edge of the phone is a little bit flimsy for the Nomad cases. That's honestly a nitpick though. The sport case is a solid option, and so far I like all of the colors they've dropped this year. Now, another case from Nomad that I really like is going to be their leather case. And obviously a big upside is that Apple doesn't make leather cases anymore. So if you want to find a good alternative, there are definitely brands that are making those. Another reason that I like these Nomad cases for their design is that the bottom lip of the phone has a slight kind of flat design to it. So when you unlock the phone, it feels really nice to slide your finger leather over. Obviously you still have the metal buttons on the side, and this special edition one has kind of these silver buttons that look really cool. And then another great thing about this case specifically is that it does have these dual wrist strap loops on the bottom. I tend to really like this feature when it's there. Even if I don't really use a wrist strap, it's just a feature that feels like it could be on every case. The only like downside that I would say about this leather case though, and this might just be the one that I have, but the case is ever so slightly longer than the Sport case. The Pro Max phones are just so giant these days, so when the case is a little bit longer than one from the same company, to me, that's the only reason that I would knock it a little bit. And then the last one on my list this year from Nomad is going to be their new Nomad rugged case. When we're talking about the previous Nomad cases, I definitely consider those more in kind of the medium protection range, and this one starts to venture into that kind of heavier duty range without getting too bulky in the hand. Plain and simple, a case like this is going to be for those people out there that drop their phone a lot, and you know who you are if you are that person. One of the small details, the pill cutout here feels like it's a little bit more rigid compared to the Sport case. This also has lifted corners on the edges of the phone, so it does actually have a lay flat design. It doesn't rock on the camera module like you will get with pretty much any other case that you buy. And you got to call it out as a win, this also has the dual wrist strap loop, so good job on that, Nomad. My only downsides with this one are that the raised corners, while nice if you don't want your phone to rock, they will make this case stick out like crazy when it's in your pocket. And also this case is on the heavier side at 53 grams, and for me personally, since I value weight in a case, that tends to be a reason that I wouldn't use something like this super often. Seriously though, a heavy case is not a con if you're the type of person that drops your phone a lot. If you do, get a good case like this. Now, of course, we still need to talk about pro tools and accessories for the iPhone 16 Pro, since these phones have such a heavy emphasis on the cameras, and there's some really interesting new stuff on the market this year. And while we're still on the topic of pro level tools for video creators, that brings me to the sponsor of this portion of the video. Motion Ray is one of the absolute best tools for any video creator, pro or not, because it gives you access to over 2 million assets for things like templates, motion graphics, music and sound effects, you name it. They also recently launched an incredible new AI voiceover tool that allows you to effortlessly convert text into speech in the form of a high quality voiceover. This is obviously super useful if you need to find a specific tone or style for a project, and there are a bunch of different voices that you can choose from. Here's some of the stuff that it can do.
Once upon a time, in a tiny village that was just too quaint for its own good.
Start your day right with our delicious, nutritious yogurt.
I honestly think that instant access to such powerful tools will be a game changer for video creators, so head over to motionray.com ASAP to try it out for yourself, and thank you to Motion Ray for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now, this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think that the new photo case from Moment might be the most pro phone case released in a very long time. If you're not familiar with Moment's cases, they tend to come with a lens interface system to where you can attach physical lenses to the outside of the phone. But something they did new this year, and one of my absolute favorite features that I've ever seen in an attachment system, is their new quick lock filters. Their new quick lock filters are these really tiny kind of disc shaped things that can just pop onto the outside of the phone. For example, on a recent trip, I was shooting with their Cinebloom attachment, which kind of blooms out the highlights similar to a black ProMist filter. They also have a variable neutral density filter, a VND filter, that is just really awesome for a phone. And when you're using these, you can just put your phone in your pocket with the filter still on because it doesn't really stick out that much farther. I personally am not the biggest fan of using these cases when they have the lens attachment system in the case, but you do have the option of popping this ring out and kind of swapping that out. I think that Moment's cases have the absolute best bottom lip of any smartphone case that I've used recently. It is super low profile, very flat. It almost just feels like it's flush with the screen, so when you go to unlock the phone, it feels like you don't have a case on there, and I love that. My only downside with these this year is that the design is very safe. They kind of went with a unibody kind of plastic design on the back of this, whereas the older ones used to have ridges cut in the back. 10 out of 10 on the quick lock stuff this year, Moment. It is one of the coolest new features to a photo or video phone case that I've seen in a very long time. All right, so switching up a bit, we're gonna transition into another brand that I really enjoy the cases from, and that is going to be Spigen. What I really like is that they do kind of these creator packages. So this is one that says Back to the Classics, and inside of here, we have the Classic C1 from Spigen. This care package that they sent me out has 3 of the colors for this year, the red, the blue, and this really nice kind of like yellowish orange. You have this really soft kind of memory foam on the inside. This case also features a dual layer design, so the inner here is this kind of soft TPU, while the outer is a polycarbonate shell. This is definitely going to be another rugged type case option though. The colors are obviously beautiful, the case looks really fun, people always ask what it is when you have it on your phone, and they have a really nice pill style cutout. And I actually think Spigen does this better than pretty much everyone on the market right now, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Same downsides here, if you don't like heavy cases, this one comes in at 55 grams, so it's really on the heavier end of all of the cases that I've weighed. It's also not super easy to kind of put on or take off of your phone. It is a little bit involved. Once the phone's in there, you're good, but yeah, getting it in or taking it out is a bit of a challenge with this case. Next, we have the Spigen Enzo Aramid case, and this one is pretty interesting. This case is made out of a very, very durable construction similar to Kevlar. It does still weigh around 50 grams, which is surprising because it's a lot thinner profile, but it is a really, really rugged feeling case. Depending on your personal tastes, you might think that this case looks really nice because you do have some of the metal detailing around the camera cutout and on the buttons. What I will say about it with this one is since it's so thin and so low profile, the added weight isn't necessarily as bad because it still feels really slim in the hand. This is a cool one and probably the most durable case that's of this slim form factor that I've ever seen. And while we're still on the topic of these kind of durable cases, the Spigen Tough Armor one is probably their best option if you do need something like that. It comes in at 55 grams, but it does feature this really nice kickstand here, so you can pop it out and rest the phone on a table on the side like this. Same deal on the inside here, you have this kind of foam for protection, although it is a kind of harder to press foam, so it's probably better for drop protection. And the buttons are super stylized on this one. They almost went kind of this like futuristic kind of squared off design for these. I do actually think that they just came out with another version of this that has the sapphire cover on the top, so if you do want a version that has full button coverage, I believe they do sell that. And the only knock for me on this one is I just personally don't like how it looks. Like, it's just not my favorite design wise, but it's one of the best options in this entire video if you are a person that needs the extra protection on your phone. This is a great one to consider. All right, so we got some really cool ones coming up now, and this is the Thin Fit case from Spigen. This one is barely heavier than Apple's silicon case. It comes in at 35.6 grams, and it features this really simple, minimalist design. It's not flashy by any means, but this is a case where I really noticed that Spigen has one of the absolute best camera control pill style cutouts. What Spigen has done on pretty much all of these cases that I'm highlighting here is they have a solid front edge, but then the back edge of the camera control button actually kind of cuts into the back of the phone here. When you actually do go to press it, your finger is able to get down to the button much easier because the back of the phone is not blocking. This case is also priced pretty well at $40 US, which is really not bad for what you're getting. If you can't tell, this is my alternative to the Apple silicon case. If you want something that's just simple and lightweight, this is the one to go with. And speaking of alternatives to Apple's first party cases, if you're a fan of the clear case, the one that Spigen makes might be the best version to get if you don't want to go the Apple route. Right out of the box, it's noticeably more grippy than Apple's first party case, so it doesn't feel like it's going to slip and slide around in your hand as much. You do still get fingerprints on this one, but not quite to the extent of the Apple case, and they're also pretty easy to just wipe off. This case does have a single wrist strap loop on the side of it here, so that is another win. And this one was one of the first third-party cases on the market to feature the flush cover for the camera control button, similar to what Apple does. All right, next up, we've got yet another of these special boxes that they send out for PR packages. So this one has kind of this two-tone design here, and as you'll see, there's a reason for that. These are going to be the Spigen Zero and Neo cases. These have almost a bit of a futuristic design to them where it's very cyberpunk, very tech. I do think that they look pretty nice, and personally, if I were to pick between the two, I do like the Neo a lot better. They almost have this like 3D effect where it looks like part of the graphic is on the top and parts on the bottom. The buttons on pretty much all of these Spigen cases are really good too, but for some reason it really stood out to me on these. They're just really easy to press. The only downsides are these might be a bit stylized for some people, so if you think that this is a bit too flashy or a bit too techy, you might not be gravitating towards this one. And these ones can tend to be a little bit stiff to take on or off the phone, just ever so slightly, but if you're just leaving it on the phone, then that shouldn't matter much. Switching things up a bit now, I want to talk about a few budget phone case options because that's an important thing to cover here. Not everyone wants to go out and drop $50, $60, $70 for a case, and that is a brand called ESR. I've done some branded work with them in the past, and the reason for that is because I do think that if you're just looking for some basic protection to go on your devices, the reason that I work with these guys is because the prices are legitimately great. The three that I have from them are going to be their clear case, a silicon case, and then their rugged kind kind of protective case here. And each of them have this kickstand that kind of folds out from the camera module so that you can set your phone down sideways if you want to, which is pretty cool. It's pretty unique. The clear case has a pill style cutout and a wrist strap loop, which is nice to see, although the plug on the bottom is a little bit more narrow, so that's where you kind of run into an issue with wider charging cables. For the silicone case, the camera control button features this notch style cutout, and while it is easy to press the button when this is on your phone, I worry that this case will have some durability issues over time. And then for their rugged case, it does have this really thick protection foam on the inside of it, which is definitely a plus. Another feature that I like about this one is that the bottom has this cover that goes over the charging port so that you can't get like dust and sand in there. I will also say that for a case that is designed to be this rugged and this durable, the camera control cutout feels like it's one of the flimsiest on any case that I've looked at on this list, so that's a definite miss for me. But yeah, the ESR stuff is just great for budget options. If you're just looking to throw something on your device to protect it from the elements, then yeah, these aren't gonna break the bank. And that of course brings us to the final section of the video. I have several premium or luxury styled cases, if you will, that range from practical to just downright silly. Some of these do actually live up to the hype for me though, and one of those is going to be the Venture case from Bellroy. When it comes to the features, materials used, and overall design aesthetic, this one is hands down going to be one of the best cases of 2024 for me. And I know I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here. This case weighs 64 grams, so it's one of the heaviest on this list, but for some reason when I use this one, just the way that it's shaped for my hand, I don't notice that it's that heavy. This is one of those cases that is definitely in the more rugged lineup for protection. The side grooves are somewhat similar to the way that Nomad does it, and beyond the really nice ridges for holding the phone, the camera control button sinks down in a way that makes it the most comfortable to use for any of the cases on this list. Also, 10 out of 10 for Bellroy. They give you a wrist strap with the phone when you buy it. The wrist strap loop is made out of stainless steel, so obviously super durable, and the only case that I've actually seen do that. And I would say that the only downside with this case for me is that the plug-in on the bottom of the phone is slightly too narrow for some of my chargers. It's definitely a small downside though. This case is like a 9.8 out of 10 for me. I think this is one of my favorites this year. For the next option in this more luxury focused category, we have the Native Union Active case. I've talked a bit about Native Union before in the past, but what I love about their phone cases are that they seem to have the best faux leather of any case that I've used. The interior of this one has this really soft kind of felt finish, which is definitely very nice looking. The camera control cutout is also really firm and has a nice cutout that your finger just rests naturally on. I would like to maybe see some metal buttons on this case. I think that that would really elevate it quite a lot, but other than that, it's just a very simple, elegant design, and I like the color of this case a lot this year. This is probably the best faux leather case on the market currently. Okay, are you ready for the preposterous, kind of silly luxury cases? I have one here. It fits in this box, in the palm of my hand. This is the Arc, I think it's the Arc Pulse case. It is a bumper style case, which you don't see a lot of. It has a premium aluminum build quality that is really nice to the touch. You have these kind of rubber gaskets on the inside here that press up against the phone, so it is a shock absorption type of material. The way that it attaches to your phone is it simply wedges onto the top and bottom, and the shape of this combined with the soft rubber makes it so that it just doesn't come off. Like when you push it on there, it is really quite hard to get these off. A practical use of this, beyond just how cool I think it makes the phone look, is actually how cool it makes the phone perform. A traditional case tends to trap heat against the back of the phone when you're doing intensive tasks, so when the phone gets hot, it ends up cooling off much faster if you have protection like this on your phone, or if you have no case at all. And I mean, come on, it just looks cool. Like, this is one of the most unique looking cases that I've ever put on my phone. The biggest downside though is the cost. This case costs anywhere from like $90 to, I think they have a version that's like over $300. I will say, like, I've been using it on my phone a lot just because I personally like the look and feel of it. So if you've got the money, if you've got it like that, then sure, by all means. But for the average everyday person, you probably shouldn't be dropping that much money on this case. And that of course leads me to the final and most ridiculous case on this list. This year, I decided to pull the trigger on it, and that is going to be the silver case from Rimowa. The design is based on the iconic Rimowa luggage, where it's aluminum with these ridges on the back. It looks really nice. Like when you have it in the hand, you look at it and you say, wow, that case looks really nice. But looks are not everything, and you should not judge a book by its cover. And in this case, the premium label of this case is definitely going to be felt most in the price tag. It costs $180 US. You're actually getting a few features that are missing that's on every other case that I featured in this list. Most notably, on the back of the box here, you'll notice it says this case is not compatible with wireless charging. The reason for that is because the back is metal and you can't wireless charge through metal. Also worth mentioning, the plug-in port at the bottom is quite narrow, so if you have a wide charging cable, it won't work with this case. So almost like a double negative for me there when it comes to charging. And obviously with the way that the ridges are shaped, they could not fit a magnet in here either. So this case is also not magsafe compatible. It's made out of this TPU kind of rubbery material. I'm not just hating on this for the sake of hating. It feels cheap compared to a lot of the cases that I've used. You are not paying for a feature-rich, really well-made case. You are paying for the brand. And if you like Rimowa as a design principle, which I personally do, then this case will do it for you. But I mean, come on, almost $200 and we can't use like a higher quality material or like pay a little bit more attention to some of those smaller details that you would see in even like entry-level cases. I've done it once. I've seen what the hype is about, and it's not for me. As mentioned, all of these cases will be linked for you down in the description below. And if you've made it this far into the video, leave a comment letting me know which was your favorite on this list. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you on the next one. Take care.